Good morning.
Good morning.
And happy Mother's Day to everyone here that has mothers. Our reading is from Acts 9, verses 36 through 43, or page 1332 in your pew Bibles. Peter brings Dorcas back to life. In Joppa, there was a follower named Tabitha. Her Greek name was Dorcas, which means dear. She was always doing good things for people and had given much to the poor. But she got sick and died, and her body was washed and placed in an upstairs room. Joppa wasn't far from Lydda.
Amen.
And the followers heard that Peter was there. They sent 2 men to say to him, "Please come with us as quickly as you can." Right away, Peter went with them. The men took Peter upstairs into the room. Many widows were there crying. They showed him the coats and the clothes that Dorcas had made while she was still alive. After Peter had sent everyone out of the room, he knelt down and prayed. Then he turned to the body of Dorcas and said, "Tabitha, get up." The woman opened her eyes, and when she saw Peter, she sat up. He took her by the hand and helped her to her feet. Peter called in the widows and the other followers and showed them that Dorcas had been raised from death. Everyone in Joppa heard what had happened, and many of them put their faith in the Lord. Peter stayed on for a while in Joppa in the house of a man named Simon, who made leather.
This story doesn't seem so strange if you remember what Jesus had taught his disciples just before he ascended, that they would be able to do things just as miraculous as he did. They would be able to heal. They would be able to work miracles. It seems like recently, by recently I mean like in the last 200 years, I'm looking at the big picture, especially mainline Protestants and Roman Catholics have forgotten that. And we actually have to turn to our Pentecostal brothers and sisters to remember that we are capable of healing. We have forgotten that the laying on of hands, the way Jesus did, really works. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't work in every situation. I think we know that. And also, we have to depend on the Holy Spirit to inform us. Let me give you an example of something just recently that happened. A friend of mine had you might say, a vision. And it was like there was a voice that said, "Go and get your annual physical checkup now. Do something now." And he thought, well, gee, I have a couple of months to go. Why would I do it now? But it was like a strong voice within him that said, "Go." And so he came from a family that had a history of various kinds of cancer. So that right there is an indication that you need to have at least a yearly checkup. But he went in there, they did some blood tests and things, and he didn't have any symptoms of anything. He had stage 2 pancreatic cancer. But the good news, it wasn't stage 4.
Amen.
And this happened, maybe about 5 months ago. They think he's responding to treatment because they got it early enough. And especially with the case of pancreatic cancer, you don't want to wait till you get stage 4, but most people don't have any symptoms. And see, that's what's so bad about it. By the time you have symptoms, it's too late. But the thing is, not only is there hands-on healing, but there's a voice that tells you to do things. Listen to that voice. When the voice tells you to go and do something, you probably should do it. I know we had talked before about driving along and being kind of like in a trance, and all of a sudden, watch out! And you look and there's a car right ahead of you, and you kind of wake up. There's that voice that tells you, hey, pay attention. I need your listening ears there. And so, it's not so miraculous, really, to understand that there are many ways of healing. And doctors and God really work together. It's not either or, it's both and. And so in the case of my friend, he listened to that inner voice, and the doctor then was able to treat him right away. And it looks like there's going to be a good prognosis, rather than what you usually find with pancreatic cancer. In the story of Dorcas, she was such a wonderful woman. I can just imagine how she was so dearly beloved. Back in those days, you had a lot of widows. If it wasn't from their husbands dying of old age, they were always going to war, right? Constantly. People don't realize that in the first century, there was more warfare per population going on than right now in 2019. And when you have a lot of people going out there to war, you're going to have a lot of widows, right? That's just the nature of the thing. And also in some areas, women really were not trained to have some kind of an outside job beyond their home or farm that they were living on. And they were very, very poor in many cases. And Dorcas had sort of like a, you might say she had kind of a mission, and that was to sew clothes. So she made clothes for a lot of these poor people and widows so they'd have something to wear. And that was sort of her missionary activity. And people really loved her. She just was a very sweet person that really cared for the needs of the poor. And you can imagine how bad people felt when there she was dead. What are we going to do? Oh my gosh, our sweet, sweet, beloved Dorcas, what happened? And the thing is, it's a good thing that Peter remembered what Jesus had said. You could do things that I could do, and even more so. And so we did. Dorcas was there. They had washed her body. They had put her on an upstairs bedroom. And Peter said, get up. And she did. And I've seen this happen many, many times in my own life of people who at least were open to healing. I've seen hands-on healing where a person who was, the doctors had given up hope, miraculously got better. Not only have I been involved with some and other people in this church doing hands-on healing, but I can remember, it was about 3 years ago, I was in a convalescent hospital, and there was somebody where the relatives were so distraught because their mother just didn't seem to be getting better. And I was asked, would you come in there and pray with us? And I said, well, not only will I pray with you, but why don't we all lay hands on your beloved mom? And we did. And mom was receptive. You have to be receptive. It doesn't work if you think it's a bunch of hooey. It really doesn't work because your body becomes kind of like a brick wall. And then you won't accept the energy that everyone gives you. But mom, luckily, was open. And she lived many years later. And she seemed to be failing at that time. And that's just one example. There are so many. The thing is, you have to be open to the possibility that you can get better. You have to have a positive attitude. If I went around and said, oh, it's all downhill now. Well, I hate to tell you this, but it's downhill ever since the day you were born. You know? It really is. So the thing is, if you have a positive attitude and are open to the Spirit's call, and you know that there is nothing impossible with God, guess what? You could get a lot better. And the thing is also, when you're open, your doctors can be guided to do the right thing and also help treat you. There is nothing impossible with God. I mean, I've seen people that had cancer and really pretty far advanced, and all of a sudden, it's almost like a miracle.
Amen.
It starts going the opposite way. And the tumors and things like that start shrinking. And I'm not even talking about chemotherapy. I'm just talking about all of a sudden they start shrinking. and the person gradually gets better. It's not like jumping out of bed and going, whoo-hoo, I'm fine. No, it's a gradual kind of a shrinking of the tumors, and all that was there, that was the cancer, has disappeared.
Amen. Praise God.
Somehow the body was able to fight it. And in the case of hands-on healing, there's a principle behind it, and I know I've shared this with you before. Duke University Medical School is at the forefront of healing, whether it's by prayer or by hands-on. And what they have discovered is that people that are prayed for, and they've done this scientifically even, people that are prayed for because they want it, heal at a faster rate than people, they go, oh, it's a bunch of junk. We don't believe in that anymore. They do, and they've done study upon study upon study. And then in the case of hands-on, how many of you know that our body's just full of electricity?
That's right.
You know that? And when we lay our hands on somebody and are open to giving it, not holding it on to ourselves, but giving it, the electricity runs into the other person's body. And the little white blood cells that are the ones that fight infection start doing their job. Now it works even better when you have more than one person. Say you have 5 people and you're all laying on hands. And those little critters are running around trying to fight the infection. It's just miraculous. And I know those of you who were with us, how many years ago was it? I know that Jolene was one of them. And you were there too, weren't you, Jan?
Yeah.
We were invited. You have to be invited. You can't force yourself on anybody. We were invited by a fellow who was in the Kaiser Hospital in Fontana. And he had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's not what was killing him. It was the chemo that was killing him. Because what happened with the chemo, it lowered his body's resistance to fighting off infection. And he had all kinds of opportunistic infections from the chemo. And they had given him all kinds of antibiotics, everything that they could think of, the most powerful ones around. No response. And so he was asked, would you like members of our church to come and lay hands on you? And he probably thought, well, why not? Nothing else seems to be working. But he was open to it. And so he was told that at the maximum he had about 2 more days to live. I mean, that's how bad it was. And so I think there were 8 of us, something like that. Because I know they were all in my van, and my van used to hold 8 people. That's how I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, there was 8.
There were 8 of us.
We didn't.
And they had his hand, his shoulders, his throat, his stomach. We laid hands on him, and we prayed. And we just threw all that energy that we had onto him. And then his body accepted it. And the little white blood cells were probably dancing around there like mad. And they did their job. 2 days later, he didn't die. He was out of the hospital.
Praise God.
And it really did happen. And that's not the only example that I could give you. There are so many others. You have to be open. And you have to realize that God is a healer, and that you can become a conduit for God's healing grace. All of us can do that. But we have to be open, and we have to give. Can't hold on to it. You have to give. And it really works. And so today I wanted to talk about the healing touch. And in some cultures, they even, in Japan, what is it called? Reiki? Right? Reiki? Is that how you pronounce it? Reiki. Anyway, that's a hands-on kind of healing that they work on. It's great for arthritis and all kinds of other things. I had somebody do it for me when I was going to have surgery on my nasal passages, which I was told was very painful afterwards. And so, I don't know what he did. He put his hand all over my face, and I had the surgery. And so, of course, the doctor wrote a prescription for some coating, right? I didn't need it. There was no pain. After the anesthesia wore off, there was absolutely no pain. He'd done what I call the energy work. So we have a lot to be encouraged about, don't we? We are all capable of healing, and we're all capable of being open to healing. That God has that for us. We need to be absolutely grateful that God blesses us with strength and energy and ability to help others. Amen.
Amen.
Are we all energized? Yes? Okay. Those of you who would like to, may stand and we'll be singing our closing song.